Now, because our day is gloomy and our topic is a little dark and heavy today, I wanted to start with something a little bit fun. And so I have a little more of a quiz that we started with last week, and we're going to continue it today. So I'll describe a religious group. You tell me if you know who it is. And if you're on Zoom, you can unmute and answer the questions. Here we go. First one. This group adheres to 5 pillars, including prayer, fasting, almsgiving, pilgrimage to Mecca, and a testimony. They declare there is no God but Allah. Who are they? Muslims, yes. These people worship icons and images. They offer 5 daily offerings, including an offering to the gods. They recite mantras. They practice meditation and yoga. Who are they? Keep going. Hindus, there we go. Yep, that's it. This group observes Christmas and Easter, practices rituals including baptism of the dead and celestial marriage, and they baptize children when the children are 8 years old. Who are they? Anybody know? Mormon, I heard it back there. Latter-day Saints. This group worships once a week, usually on Sunday, where they sing and pray and endure a long, dry talk called a sermon while sitting on incredibly uncomfortable seats called pews. And afterwards, they are rewarded with coffee and donuts. Who are they? That is you. Very good. Not too hard to figure that out. I know. I have said before that those pews are not made for comfort. They are made for repentance. So they are not comfortable. All right, so we are continuing our conversation about why church. And yes, you probably all have reasons why you attend church, but we need to expand our thinking about that so that we can include more and more people. So today, I do want to talk about fear, and I want to start by asking you, like we asked the kids, what are you afraid of? And I'm not talking about creepy crawly things on the ground. I'm talking about what is it that really makes you feel fear in your deepest being. Now, you don't have to say it. I'm hoping during our talk this morning something will rise up for you if it hasn't already. But let's look at our New Testament reading. That perfect love casts out fear. That God's love is stronger than our fear, and that if we are still living in fear, that somehow love has not completed its work in us to compensate or alleviate or at least help us manage that fear. Now, in a book I've been reading lately called No Nonsense Spirituality by Britt Hartley, she talks about 4 existential fears, 4 fears that all human beings have. Just comes with the package of life on this planet. And you may agree or disagree. In fact, I love it when you disagree so that we can have more conversations about this. But I'd like to unpack these 4 fears, and let's talk about, does church actually help us manage those fears and do life maybe a little bit more in a healthy way than if we were saddled with these fears, okay? So we'll begin with the fear of death. When I asked you what you were deeply afraid of, maybe some of you already thought of death, and maybe not your own death. Maybe you are more afraid that someone you love will die. Sometimes we joke about those things just to make it a little bit easier to deal with. My husband and I talk often about who's going to go first. So that if there's a big mess of something in the backyard or in the garage, he'll say, well, I'm going to go first, and you're going to have to clean this up. And I'm like, no, I'm going to go first, and you're going to be the one that stays behind and cleans this up. But it is so hard when there is a death in the family because we grieve. We have to find a new normal, and it is so difficult to do. Now, archaeologists confirm that among the earliest ritual practices for human beings is the ritual around burial of the dead, where bodies are arranged a certain way, where they are covered with rocks or laid in a cave or buried with certain items. And so this has been a fear for people forever. Now, how can church help with this kind of fear? Here in the Christian churches, we hold the story of hope, don't we? We say, this is not the end. Death is not the end. Death is a becoming, a new beginning, and we will see our loved ones again. We hold that hope for people, even those that say that they really don't believe that. They know that we have this hope. And we also have rituals that help us process and move through and sometimes live in grief. And those rituals include funeral services and prayers where we say the words and we sing the songs, memorial services and celebrations of life where people come forward and they say, this is what I remember about that person. This is the part of that person that's going to live on in me. And those rituals help people move through grief. They help people at the time of grief and at the time of death by giving hope and by giving us something we have to do, right? Now, I think the Jewish community has probably the most beautiful ritual around grieving. It's called sitting Shiva. Maybe you've heard of that. When a Jewish family has a loss, a death in their family, and they are grieving, the whole community comes together, and somebody stays with that family for 7 days. They take turns. They are available. They are always with them, so they know they're never alone. And the most beautiful thing for me, as an introvert who likes her alone time, the people who come to sit Shiva in your home, they will not say a word. They will say nothing to you unless you first speak to them. So their presence is the comfort that they bring. They are there for you if you need them. And if you just don't want to talk to anybody, they will not say a word. It's a beautiful way to cope with, to manage our fear of death. And church does that for us. Now, our next fear that we want to talk about is isolation. Isolation is a very left brain kind of thing. Our left brain tells us, I am me, you are you, and we are different, and I can never know your experience fully, and you can never know mine fully. At church, we focus more on the right side of the brain that says we are all connected, we are all part of the same life force, we all have part of the divine in us, and we are all one. Now, isolation is something that we're seeing more and more as people are more and more fractured in society, and we know that loneliness is a big problem. People have not found ways to connect that are authentic. And church communities offer us the way that we can connect one with another. But how many of you know you can sit in a whole room full of people like this and still feel isolated? You only feel like you are part of the group when you have spent a little bit of time getting to know one another. Now, for some of you, you not only know each other, but you know each other's kids, you've been to their homes, you know their families, you know their history, you know all the stories about them. But there are many other people that are coming together right now from all different kinds of backgrounds, and we don't know each other that well yet. So we need to spend a little time in forming those relationships so that everybody feels included and welcomed and known. You remember the TV show Cheers? The song where everybody knows your name? That's what church should be. We should all know one another. And I think that's why most churches never top 100 people. Because about 100 people is all you can manage if you want to know at least everybody's name, and even that gets difficult. And I think that's a good thing. A mega church, I'm sure, is wonderful for some folks, but I would much rather have a community where I know you by name and I can call you if I need help, or if I need prayer, or if I need somebody to help with coffee hour. That makes a community. That covers that fear of isolation. So we've got the fear of death, that's a big one. The fear of isolation, nobody wants to be alone. And the fear of freedom. Now, you might not agree with this one. It was a surprise to me. It feels very counterintuitive. But evidence shows that when people have a million choices in front of them, they have so much freedom that they feel like life becomes so complex it is unmanageable, and they cannot decide what to do, and they might just not do anything. So a silly example is if somebody sends you to the grocery store and says, buy some salad dressing, but they don't tell you anything else. So you go to the grocery store and you find out there are hundreds of kinds of salad dressing. So what do you buy? You have no idea. You might ask someone, and that person would help you limit your choices by saying, okay, this brand, buy this brand, but don't buy that brand. Or don't even buy any of these, go home and make your own salad dressing. Or maybe we like Thousand Island or Ranch, so that limits your choices. And as soon as your choices are limited, you can make a decision. But before that, you're unable to. I remember when I was applying for colleges, a 17-year-old kid, I didn't know what I was doing. Does anybody know when they're 17? I don't know. I thought I could go anywhere to go to school. And then I realized how much school cost. And then I realized I couldn't afford to stay in a dorm. So now I could only go to school if I could drive there from my parents' home. That limited my choices by a great deal. And then they were further limited by whichever school gave me the most scholarship dollars. It was a simple thing to choose Western in Kalamazoo. That was the closest and the least expensive option. So that's where I went. Now I look back and I think, gosh, why didn't I think about Notre Dame? Why didn't I think about U of M or any of these other places? My choices were limited, but it got me to school, and so that was a good thing. Those are silly examples, but it just gives you an idea of how this works. Now, if you don't have any limits on your choices, you end up having fear because everything is unstable. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what to do next. And if you have a high level of fear, you will sell your freedom to the first guru or cult leader or political dictator who comes along. Anybody who says, this is simple and I can solve it and I can make your life manageable and easy, you will sell your freedom to a person like that. So keep that in mind. Now, what does church do to help us with this overwhelming sense of freedom? Oh, church is so good at this. We're almost too good at telling you what not to do. We love to tell you what sin is. Sin means you're hurting yourself, you're hurting God, you're hurting one another. Don't do those things, right? Don't lie, don't cheat, don't go out and steal money from someone. Instead, do these good things, right? Go to school, get a job, have a family, be a productive part of society. Church, though, forgets where to stop. And we keep going, giving you more things you can't do. Don't drink alcohol. Don't use birth control. Don't be gay. Don't. We love to keep stacking on the don'ts and limiting your choices until eventually this is called high control religion and people leave. Some things, as my mother likes to say, are nobody else's business, even the church and especially the government. We need to have some freedom. So church is good at helping us limit freedom as long as they don't limit us too much. Now, the last one that I want to talk about, the last fear, is meaninglessness, which we talked about 2 weeks ago, I think. We talked about Ecclesiastes saying everything is meaningless, and then teaching us how to find meaning in these small moments. Because most of us want to have a life that matters. When we are ready to die, we want to look back at our life and say, that was good. I did what I wanted to do that was helpful and kind and loving to others, and I will be remembered for that. But not all of us can be the leader of the free world or a world-class composer or an artist. Most of us just live an ordinary life. And so we have to find meaning in those ordinary moments. And church is a wonderful place for that. We can find meaning for you because you matter here. Bring food for the emergency food pantry. Come and work at the baby sprinkles and give away diapers. Be here for the special dance, the community dance that we have. Walk in the crop walk. We need you. You matter. And people need to hear that message. There are 100 different ways I can think of that we can invite one another to find meaning just in doing small things, just in singing together, in praying together, in being here together, in having conversations. So church is wonderful about helping people with their fear of meaninglessness. Now, if church is so good that we help people with their fear of death, their fear of isolation, their fear of freedom, and their fear of meaninglessness, why are we not standing room only this morning? Where is everybody else? If we're so good at all of this, and if people need help with these fears, then where are they? Pew Research Group has done some studies about the decline of the church, the secularization of America. And right now, I think the last, well, actually it's not today, this might be a couple of years ago, the percentage of American adults who belong to a religious group and attend services at least now and then was 64%. I think that's a little high right now. I think it's lower than that. The fastest growing group is the nones, N-O-N-E-S, those who are spiritual but not religious, who do not claim affiliation with any religious group. That group is growing constantly. And the projection that Pew Research makes is that by 2070, the percentage of adult Americans who will be part of a religious group goes down to 35%. That's in one generation, folks. In one generation, we go from 64% to 35% of adults who participate in a religious organization. That's pretty scary. Now, why are people leaving? See, that's my why. When Pat showed us that book and it says why on the cover, I'm like, that's the why I want to know. I want to understand why. And so because I'm in that digital media class, I began to look on social media and I type in, you can type things in the search bar, why are people leaving church? And I found hundreds of interviews and articles and podcasts and YouTube videos of people talking about their experiences in church and why they're not there anymore. And almost all of these folks, by the way, are under 40 years of age. That's important. There were several that were over that, but almost all of them were less than 40 years old. And they all said the exact same thing, and I listened to probably a dozen. They had many reasons for leaving church, but there was one common thread through every single one of these videos and podcasts and interviews. And that was, they said, we had questions. And no one could answer our questions, and they told us to stop asking questions because we were upsetting people. They could not ask their questions. These are smart individuals. Our young people are very intelligent and they have access to way more information than we do, and they have questions. And we are not only not answering them, we are not even allowing them to ask the questions. And the questions are like these. Missionary Kevin Garcia asked the question, after 12 years of conversion therapy, he asked the question, can God love me even though I'm gay? There are ministers who were trained up in denominations that taught that the Bible is historically true. Ministers like Timmy Gibson, Aaron Tomlinson, Tristan Harris, who asked the question, if these stories are true, why does archaeological evidence not support them? Christy Burke is another young person who asked the question, if God is love, how can God send anybody to a place of eternal torment, which is what her church taught. And what happened when she asked that question is that a whole group from her church came to her house, surrounded her, laid hands on her, and tried to cast a demon out of her. These are the kinds of experiences folks are having when they ask questions. And this is why I think it is so important for us, if we want to be a community of faith that not just survives 2070, but thrives, we've got to hold sacred space for people who have questions. And the beauty of it is that we don't even need to know the answers to these questions. We just need to let them ask and say, we will explore this with you. Let's see where this goes. And in the meantime, let's do our rituals together. Let's say the words and sing the songs that calm our fears. Let's face those fears and hold space so that love can keep doing its work in us to bring that work to completion so that we're not afraid. And we will question with you, and we will walk that path with you, and you can join with us, and we can be that family, that support that you need. I wish that the churches that the folks I listed had responded that way, because they might still have a church family now. Now, not all of them left faith entirely, but they all left the church where they were not allowed to ask questions. Now, today in our reading, it said, God's perfect love casts out fear. And we know that in the Bible, many, many times we read the phrase, do not fear, fear not, don't be afraid. It's as if our biblical writers knew the fear that we would be facing just by being human. And the writer of our piece of poetry this morning, Khalil Gibran, also knew that fear. The river is afraid. The river is running down this hill and sees the ocean and sees its end. The river is not going to survive this, it thinks. It cannot go back. And it is directed by gravity. Its choices are limited. It is being funneled into this place where it meets the ocean, and it is afraid until it arrives in the ocean, then realizes it's going to become the ocean. It's going to be even better when it joins the ocean. You know, I love to think of God as an ocean, because think about it for a moment. It has unknowable depths. It has all kinds of mysterious creatures on the bottom that we don't even know about. We haven't even discovered yet. It is powerful beyond belief. We've been watching that on the news as these hurricanes have been hitting Florida. It can't be stopped. And we are just buckets of God. We are buckets dipped into that ocean. We are all filled with that life-giving spirit. Now, some of our buckets are a little crusty. Some of our buckets are dried up or brackish or slimy, and we just need to be dipped in that ocean again to get refreshed. That's what church does. Church gives us a place and a community where we can get refreshed. However we believe that happens, whatever questions we're wrestling with, we can come and get a little bit more of that living water. So today I just want to invite you all, as we talked about those fears, maybe one of them kind of resonated with you. So I just want you to think for a moment about that fear and ask yourself the question, how does this community of faith help me with that fear?